Okay, so you're here because you want to really understand how SAP S4HANA can kind of boost retail sales and distribution, right?
Yeah,
We've got a ton of stuff, articles, research, notes, all about that.
absolutely. Yeah.
And basically today we're going to try to extract the most important insights about how S4HANA can totally transform sales and distribution, make
Mhm.
it clear and tell you what you really need to know.
Exactly.
So I guess let's just dive right in.
Yeah, let's go for it.
What do you think is like the most fundamental thing when it comes to S4HANA and retail sales and distribution?
We really got to start with order processing, right? I mean, it's the
Yeah.
heart of everything.
Okay, so order processing, so like what a customer orders, right?
Absolutely.
But like I've seen in some of our sources like different types of orders.
Oh, yeah, definitely,
Like
definitely.
a cash sale is different from like a consignment.
Huge difference. Yeah.
So how does S4HANA deal with that?
It's really interesting. So, like you said, you have all these different types of orders. Like you mentioned, cash sales, you've got rush orders, consignment, where you're giving them goods and they pay when they sell.
Yeah, so many different ones.
Huge variety. And the cool thing is, S4HANA knows how to treat each one. It triggers different actions for logistics, for billing, everything based on that order type.
So it's like the type of order determines everything that happens after.
It sets the whole process in motion in a specific way.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's huge for businesses because they can streamline things just by using the right order type.
Right.
Absolutely.
So like I guess regardless of the type of order, it ends up as like a sales order in the system.
Exactly. So all those details, everything gets structured into the sales order. You have the header, which is like the overall information about the order. And then you have the items.
Okay.
And those list out each product, the quantity, all that good stuff.
Right. So that's like if I ordered 5 shirts and 2 pairs of shoes or whatever.
Exactly. Each one gets its own line.
Yeah.
And then here's the interesting part. Within each item, you have these things called item categories.
Item categories, what's that?
Yeah, so these categories control how the system handles each item. Like, is it a standard item? Is it free of charge?
Oh, okay.
But even have specific codes like TAN for a standard item or TAN for free of charge. These little codes tell the system what to do.
Huh. And do those categories, like, do they determine anything else?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're super important for pricing, for whether an item needs to be delivered, if it needs to be billed.
Okay.
So, yeah, they control a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff.
So it's like the fine print.
Yeah, you could say that.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then within those items, you have these things called schedule lines.
Schedule lines, what are those?
So basically, they specify when and how much of each item should be delivered.
Oh, okay. So like I need 3 shirts on Tuesday and 2 on Friday, something like that.
Exactly. And they're also really important for MRP, which stands for Material Requirements Planning. It's how businesses make sure they have enough stock on hand.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah, and the system actually uses schedule line categories too, based on the item's MRP settings, to manage all that.
So much complexity behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what it can do.
And so like I mean, obviously this involves more than just the customer, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
the warehouse and the people delivering.
So S4HANA keeps track of all the different players, all the business partners involved in each sale. You have the sold to party, which is basically the customer who placed the order.
Okay, the person buying the stuff.
Exactly. Then you have the ship to party. That's where the goods are actually going, which might be different from the sold to.
Like if I'm buying a gift for someone.
Exactly. Then you have the billed to party, the one who receives the invoice.
Makes sense.
And finally, you have the payer, the one who's actually paying the bill.
Okay, so it's super detailed.
Yeah, they've thought of everything. And that's actually a good thing because it helps prevent errors. Like, imagine sending an invoice to the wrong address.
Oh gosh, yeah, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, and that's where this incomplete document protocol comes in. It basically checks that all the necessary information is there before anything else happens.
Oh, like a safety net?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes sure you have all the addresses right, the payment info, everything. So it prevents those kinds of mistakes from happening down the line.
Very cool. Very cool. So we've got the order, everything's good to go. What happens next?
Well, that's where the magic of the sales document flow comes in.
Yeah.
Basically, S4HANA creates this whole history of everything that happens with a sale.
Okay.
From the initial inquiry, like maybe the customer sends an email asking about a product,
Right.
then maybe there's a quote, then the order, the delivery, and finally the invoice. All those documents are linked together in this flow.
So it's like following the breadcrumbs of the sale?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means you can track the status of any sale at any time. You know exactly where it is in the process.
So helpful.
Oh, yeah. It's super useful for businesses.
I bet.
Yeah. And then there's this thing called copy control, which basically determines what information gets automatically transferred when you create a new document.
Okay, so like if I turn a quote into an order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Copies over all the relevant information like the customer details, the items, the schedule lines. Saves a ton of time and reduces errors.
Oh, that's really smart.
Yeah, they've really thought this through.
So now we have this sales order in the system.
Right.
Fully complete, not incomplete.
Exactly.
Oh.
Nice and complete.
Oh.
And now it's time to think about shipping, right?
Okay, so shipping.
Yes. So the first thing you need is a shipping document. It basically tells everyone what needs to be shipped, where it needs to go, all that good stuff.
Okay.
And then the system can group deliveries together for transport.
So it's not like each individual item gets shipped separately?
It can,
Yeah.
but it's usually more efficient to group things together.
Right.
That's where individual and collective shipments come in. Yeah. And sometimes, to get the goods from point A to point B, you need multiple shipments, maybe even different modes of transport.
Like a truck than a plane.
Exactly. That's called a transport chain.
Hmm.
And S4HANA can track all of that, how deliveries are grouped, what routes they're taking, everything.
So it's like a travel agent for my goods.
You could say that. It plans out the whole journey for them.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
pretty sophisticated.
So what about the actual transportation process? Like, how does that work in S4HANA?
So it's broken down into three main steps: creation, processing, and completion.
Okay.
Creation is where you basically create the shipment in the system.
Yeah.
You enter all the details, like what's being shipped, where it's going, what route it's taking. Processing is where things really start moving. The goods are loaded, they might cross borders, things like that. And then completion is when the goods arrive at their final destination.
Okay, so it's like a step-by-step process.
Exactly. And to make sure everything runs smoothly, S4HANA uses these things called routes.
Routes, like on a map.
Kind of, yeah. So a route is basically a predefined path that the goods will take. It includes things like the distance, the duration, the different stages of the journey, and any transfer points or border crossings.
I see. So it's like if I'm shipping something from Cologne to Vienna, the route might include a stop in Frankfurt and then maybe a border crossing into Austria.
Exactly. And the system can actually determine the best route automatically based on all those factors. It's pretty smart.
Very cool. So does the system just automatically know how long it takes to get from one place to another?
Well, it takes into account the delivery times for the original sales order, of course.
Right, right.
And it also uses these things called activity profiles, which basically control what messages and texts are sent out automatically during the transport process.
Oh, okay. So it's like it might send a notification when the goods have been loaded onto the truck or when they've crossed the border.
Exactly. And then on the financial side, there's transport charge estimation and the transport cost document.
What are those?
So transport charge estimation helps you figure out how much it's going to cost to ship the goods.
Okay.
And the transport cost document is a detailed breakdown of all the costs, like freight charges, insurance, customs duties. It's super helpful for managing your transportation expenses.
Makes sense. So we've shipped our goods. What happens next?
Well, now it's time for delivery and goods issue.
Okay, so the stuff is actually arriving.
Right, so for that, you need an outbound delivery document. It has all the details about the delivery, like the shipping point, the route, all that stuff.
Got it.
And S4HANA can actually schedule the delivery automatically based on the requested delivery date and the lead times for things like picking, packing, and loading.
Okay, so it factors in all the necessary steps.
Exactly. And you can create outbound deliveries with or without reference to a sales order, or you can use collective processing to create a bunch of deliveries at once.
So efficient.
Yeah, they've really tried to streamline things. And then when it comes to warehouse operations, S4HANA can even tell you where to pick the items from based on certain rules.
So like it knows where everything is in the warehouse?
Yeah, pretty much. It takes into account the shipping point, the division, the storage conditions of the material. It's pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And there are all sorts of tools to help manage outbound deliveries, like the Outbound Delivery Monitor.
That sounds helpful.
Yeah. It's a lifesaver for warehouse managers.
So we've picked the items, now what?
Well, in simpler warehouse setups, picking might involve creating transfer orders.
Okay.
But in more advanced systems, you might use pick tasks instead.
Got it.
And there's this setting in the system called relevant for picking that basically tells the system whether picking is required for this particular item.
I see. So it's like another one of those settings that controls everything behind the scenes.
Exactly. And then once the items have been picked, you use this app called Pick Outbound Delivery to confirm the quantities and trigger the goods issue.
Goods issue, what's that?
That's basically the moment when ownership of the goods transfers to the customer.
Oh.
Yeah, and it also updates your stock levels in the system. So it's a really important step.
Makes sense. But before goods issue, you have to pack the stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
like in boxes and stuff.
Exactly. So that's where packing comes in. You use packaging materials, which are basically boxes, pallets, things like that.
Okay.
And you create these things called handling units, which are basically groups of items that are packed
Yeah,
together.
got it.
And you can do all this manually, or the system can automate it for you.
I bet that's helpful.
Oh, yeah. It saves a ton of time and effort.
So finally, we get to billing.
Yeah, the last step in the sales cycle.
Yeah.
This is where you create the invoice.
Okay.
And S4HANA supports all sorts of different invoice types, like standard invoices, credit memos, debit memos, even pro forma invoices for customs
And
purposes.
it's many different types.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. And billing can be linked to the delivery or to the original order.
Okay.
And of course, you have credit and debit memos for handling returns and adjustments.
Right.
Those often require approval before they can be processed.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And for returns, you have these special return order documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then when it comes to actually creating the invoice, S4HANA updates this thing called the billing index.
What's that?
It's basically a record of all the billing documents.
Okay.
And you can create invoices manually, or you can schedule them, or you can let the system create them automatically in the background.
So many options.
Yeah, they've really tried to make it flexible. And you can also do collective billing, which combines multiple transactions into a single invoice.
So efficient.
Exactly. But sometimes, if there are differences in the order details, the invoices might have to be split.
I see.
Yeah. And of course, all these billing actions create corresponding financial entries in the system.
Got it. So we've covered the main flow, but I know there are all sorts of special processes, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like rush orders.
Okay, yeah.
With those, S4HANA can create the delivery automatically to speed things up. And then you have cash sales, where the invoice is printed immediately.
Right.
Then there are free deliveries, where you don't need an invoice at all.
Okay.
And of course, there's consignment processing, which we talked about earlier with all its different steps like fill up, issue, return,
Right.
pick up.
Right.
You also have contracts like quantity contracts and value contracts.
Okay.
And delivery schedules, where deliveries are spread out over time.
Wow, so much complexity.
Yeah, it's a whole world in there.
And we haven't even talked about master data.
Oh, yeah, it's a whole other can of worms. But there are some really important functions there, like material substitution, where the system automatically replaces an item if it's out of stock.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, it is. And then there's material listing and exclusion, which controls which products certain customers can order.
Okay, makes sense.
And of course, there's the whole world of pricing with price schemas, condition types, access sequences, condition tables.
So complicated.
That can be,
Yeah.
but it's all about making sure the prices are calculated correctly.
Got it. So basically, SAP S4HANA takes care of everything from the moment an order is placed to the moment the invoice is paid.
Exactly. It's called logistics execution, or LE, and it's like the glue that holds the whole supply chain together.
Very cool. And how does the system actually know how to do all this? Like, how is it structured?
Well, on a high level, you have business areas, which are like different segments of your company.
Okay.
And then within transportation, you have transport planning points, which help you organize your transportation network.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's all about making sure everything runs smoothly and efficiently.
So big picture, what's the main takeaway for businesses when it comes to S4HANA and sales and distribution?
I'd say the main takeaway is that S4HANA provides this incredibly powerful and integrated system.
Right.
It can handle pretty much every aspect of the sales and fulfillment process.
Hmm.
And the goal is to make everything more efficient, more streamlined, ultimately boosting sales and your bottom line.
Got it. So it's like a supercharged engine for your business.
Exactly. It gives you the tools you need to really take things to the next level.
Awesome. Well, that was a lot of information. I hope everyone listening feels like they've got a good grasp on how S4HANA can transform retail sales and distribution.
Me too. It's a fascinating system with so much to explore.
And that brings us to our final thought for you all. We've talked about all the technical details, but what are the bigger implications? How can businesses leverage this technology to not just improve their operations, but to really create a better experience for their customers? Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.